I don't know if you've noticed, but the pasta aisle has exploded with new options. We've got lentil linguine and chickpea rotini and high protein penne. But do these trendy new brands actually offer a nutritional boost, or are we just paying more for pasta with a health halo? Well, today we're taking a closer look at which of these might be worth putting in your cart and which ones might be just a little overcooked. Welcome to the Nutrition Diva podcast, a show where we take a closer look at nutrition news and research, products and trends so that you can feel more confident about what you eat. I'm your host, Monica Reinagel, and today's episode was suggested by Valerie, who listens from Toronto, Canada. And she writes, I'm seeing lots of content on social media about protein pasta. I would love a review of how protein pastas compare with traditional or whole wheat pasta. Do they really offer a meaningful protein and fiber boost? And are they worth that premium price? Well, if you have ventured down the pasta aisle recently, you have probably noticed that the options have expanded exponentially, and it can feel a little overwhelming. I don't blame Valerie for wondering whether all these new enhanced options really deliver any substantial benefit. So let's take a look at how traditional pasta, whole wheat pasta, and various types of protein and fiber enhanced pastas stack up. And we'll start with traditional pasta, which is usually made from durum wheat. This is a variety of wheat that is naturally somewhat higher in protein, and that helps the pasta keep its structure and its shape when it's cooked in boiling water. So you can think of durum as its first name and wheat as its family name or last name. But you'll often also see the word semolina on pasta packages. Semolina doesn't refer to the type of wheat, but rather the way it's ground. It's ground coarsely, and that helps produce that firm texture that we associate with good pasta. So it's sort of like the word Esquire that you sometimes see after a lawyer's name. Semolina is not part of the identity. It's just a clue to how it's been prepared and what role it plays. So traditional pasta contains a modest amount of protein, about 7 grams per serving. Because it's made from refined flour, it doesn't contain a whole lot of fiber, usually about 2 grams of fiber per serving or less. But if you cook and then cool your pasta, some of that starch transforms into resistant starch. That's a type of carbohydrate that essentially acts as fiber in the body. Now, what if instead of refined wheat, your pasta is made with whole wheat flour, which preserves more of the fiber, the vitamins, the minerals found in the original wheat grain? Whole wheat pasta typically offers more fiber than traditional pasta, around 5 to 7 grams per serving, compared to 1 or 2 grams in traditional pasta. The protein content, however, is roughly the same, usually just around 7 to 8 grams per serving. So the whole wheat pasta definitely offers an upgrade in terms of fiber, but it also tends to have a denser, grainier feel, a much more pronounced wheat flavor. Sometimes it feels a little heavy. Some people love it, or at least they get used to it, but others find that it really compromises the experience of eating pasta altogether. And honestly, if you don't eat a lot of pasta and you really prefer the taste and the texture of regular pasta, it is totally reasonable to stick with it and focus on boosting fiber with the other things on your plate, like vegetables or beans. Now, another option for a pasta that offers a nutritional upgrade is a legume-based pasta. And many of these are made from 100% legume flour, just ground up chickpeas or lentils or peas. And they are going to be higher in both protein and fiber than traditional pasta. So a 2-ounce serving can provide 6 to 8 grams of fiber, but also 12 to 14 grams of protein. So that is significantly more than either traditional or whole wheat pasta. And the protein from legumes is also a bit more complete than protein from wheat. So you're getting both more protein, but also a higher quality protein. Now, the texture and the flavor can vary by brand, but many people find that these lentil based pastas are a completely acceptable swap for traditional pasta. In my experience, the shorter shapes, so things like penne or rotini, tend to hold up a little bit better than the longer ones like spaghetti or fettuccine. And following the package directions for cooking is really important here because undercooked legume pasta can be really chalky and overcooked versions can totally fall apart, turn into mush. Now, one important caveat for these legume pastas, some people may experience some digestive discomfort, so gas or bloating, especially if they're not used to eating a lot of legumes. This often improves with time, so repeated exposure, but definitely something you want to be aware of, especially if you're introducing these pastas into your regular routine. So, if the taste and the texture work for you, legume pastas offer a substantial nutritional upgrade, particularly for those who eat plant based diets or anyone who's just trying to boost fiber and protein in a simple and pantry friendly way. Now, some of the most popular protein pasta brands combine a traditional wheat flour with chickpea or lentil flour or pea or soy protein isolates. And these blends are typically going to deliver 10 to 15 grams of protein per 2-ounce serving. That's similar to the 100% lentil pastas. But because they still contain some wheat, these blends tend to have a more familiar texture and flavor. And they're also a little bit less likely to cause those digestive issues, which makes them a good compromise for people who want the nutritional benefits without the more pronounced differences in flavor or the effects on the gut. Now, of course, the nutritional upgrade depends on what's actually in the mix. So if you're curious about whether the protein is coming from chickpeas or pea protein or something else, you want to look at that ingredient list. And, be wary of vague claims like high protein that don't offer you any context because some products may contain only slightly more protein than regular pasta, while others, as I say, really do offer a significant bump. Another option that you'll run into in the pasta aisle are gluten-free pastas made from grains like rice, corn, or quinoa, or sometimes starchy roots like tapioca or cassava. And the texture and flavor of these gluten-free pastas have come a long way in recent years. Although, again, in my experience, the long shapes, like spaghetti, tend to work better than the shorter shapes. So it's exactly the opposite of the lentil pastas. And similarly, you also really want to follow those cooking instructions carefully because gluten-free pasta can go from al dente to overcooked surprisingly quickly. Now, while these are a real godsend for people with gluten or wheat intolerance, most gluten-free pastas are actually lower in protein than traditional wheat pasta, and they're not significantly higher in fiber. They really are mostly starch. So if you don't need to avoid gluten, there's really no particular reason to choose these. There's one more category that I want to mention, even though these aren't typically marketed as being higher in protein, but rather as being higher in fiber. And some of these pastas use high amylose wheat, which is a form of wheat that naturally contains more resistant starch. Others use modified starches that have been treated to make them more resistant to digestion. Either way, this is going to reduce both the net carbs and the glycemic impact of that pasta. And as a bonus, that resistant starch can support gut health. So if you are focused on blood sugar control or gut health, these may be worth exploring. But if your main focus is really to increase protein, they're not necessarily going to move the needle much in that department. And by the way, if you're curious about the different types of resistant starch, I recently did a full episode on that, and I will link to it in the show notes. Throughout this episode, we've been comparing the protein and the fiber content of various types of pasta, and I'm basing my comparisons on the standard serving size, which is about 2 ounces of dry pasta, or roughly 1 cup of cooked pasta. But here's the thing. The portions that we are typically served here in the United States, and increasingly in Canada too, are very often 2 or even 3 times that amount. So a restaurant portion or even a home cooked bowl of pasta can easily contain 4 to 6 ounces of dry pasta. Although the different types of pasta contain different amounts of protein and fiber, the portion size is ultimately going to matter a lot more than which type you choose, especially in terms of blood sugar response and total energy or calorie intake. But assuming that you're sticking to standard portion sizes, are the differences between all these different pastas enough to matter? Potentially, yes. That increased protein and fiber is significant enough to support better satiety, helping you feel fuller and more satisfied after the meal. And by the way, that can also make it easier to stick to those more moderate portions. Those extra grams of fiber can also contribute to gut health and just help you move closer to your daily fiber goals. That's something that most people in the US fall short on. So most adults are encouraged to aim for around 25 to 30 grams of fiber every day, and our average intake is closer to 15 grams. So adding even 4 or 5 extra grams of fiber from a serving of pasta, that could really make a difference there. And similarly, for those who are trying to dial up their protein intake, maybe with the goal of preserving or building lean muscle, finding ways to add another 5 to 10 grams of protein to a meal can really contribute meaningfully to that total daily intake. So for context, the current recommended intake of protein for adults is around 50 grams per day, but many experts, including me, believe that doubling that amount could better support healthy aging and muscle maintenance and weight management. So, yes, these upgraded pastas can make a meaningful contribution to your nutrition. As for whether those nutritional benefits are enough to justify that premium price, which can be 2 or even 3 times that of traditional pasta, that's really going to depend on your needs and preferences. If pasta is something you eat frequently, or you're actively working to increase your protein or your fiber intake, that might be a worthwhile trade-off. But if it's more of just an occasional comfort food and you're already building a well-rounded meal around it, in that case, you may not need to splurge on a specialty product. And finally, remember that pasta, however enhanced nutritionally, it's generally not going to be the nutritional star of the dish. For that, you want to look to those vegetable-forward sauces and additional protein sources like maybe some seafood or chicken or a plant-based alternative. That's often where the real nutritional upgrade happens. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground today, so let me just offer a quick summary of the main takeaways. Traditional pasta offers a decent amount of protein, but it's pretty low in fiber. It's a perfectly healthy choice, especially when your portion sizes are moderate and it's part of a balanced meal. Whole wheat pasta provides a small bump in fiber, but the upgrade is more modest than many people assume. If you like it, great. But if you don't, you're not missing out on a huge benefit. Legume-based pastas are higher in both protein and fiber and offer a slightly better protein quality than just wheat. They can be a great option for plant-based eaters or anyone who's just looking for a more filling bowl of pasta. Blended pastas made with wheat and legume flour together, or sometimes a protein isolate, they strike a nice balance between familiarity and enhanced nutrition. So if you want to boost your protein, but you're not ready to go full chickpea, those are worth a look. Gluten-free pastas are really important for those who need to avoid gluten, but they're not necessarily more nutritious. And in fact, they often contain less protein than traditional pasta. And finally, these resistant starch-enhanced pastas may be useful for people trying to reduce digestible carbs, for example, to support blood sugar or calorie control, but they generally do not provide much of a protein boost. But no matter which type of pasta you choose, portion size still matters most. Getting familiar with what a standard 2-ounce dry serving actually looks like can actually be one of the quickest ways to give your pasta meals a nutritional upgrade. But the biggest opportunity to improve the nutrition, as well as the flavor of a pasta dish, is usually what you put on it: vegetables, beans, seafood, or other lean proteins. Thanks to Valerie for her great question. If you have a question you'd like me to answer, you can email me at nutrition@quickanddirtytips.com. And if you'd like to find out about having me speak at your conference or your live or virtual event, you can learn more at wellnessworkshere.com. Nutrition Diva is a Quick and Dirty Tips podcast. Holly Hutchings is our director of podcasts. Steve Riekeberg is our audio engineer. Morgan Christensen heads up podcast operations and advertising. Thanks also to Matt Hoops. But most of all, thanks to you for listening.